안녕하세요. 이 교회 한 살 때부터 다닌 안수빈입니다. 한국말 잘 못해서 영어로 하겠습니다. Hi, my name is Subin On. In order to give you a better understanding as to how I became the person I am today, let me tell you a brief timeline of some important events of my life. 18 years ago, I was involved in a car accident, which damaged my spinal cord, leading to numerous health problems. I was diagnosed paralyzed from the chest down and had little to no sensation or movement on some parts of my arms, hands, and fingers. Because of this injury, I also suffer from spasms, an involuntary contraction of my muscles which causes my legs to shake. No control over my own bladder or bowel, which means I have to go to the bathroom in a timely manner, under-functioning kidneys, and scoliosis. These health problems forced me to go to many hospitals and see many doctors in various locations, including Fairfax Innova, Children's Hospital in DC, UVA in Charlottesville, and Shriners in Philadelphia. As I was oftentimes the youngest spinal cord injury patient that these hospitals had seen, the research teams within the hospitals conducted many experiments on me, trying to help me recover function. In the first study that I took part in, the researchers wanted to see if my leg muscles memory would remember walking from the short period before the accident. They started on a bike that I had to pedal with my arms in order to force my legs to move in a cycling motion simultaneously. The research team also conducted sensation tests where I had to close my eyes while they were poking me with a Q-tip in different places, and I had to tell them if I had any sensation or not. The research wasn't the only reason why I had many hospital visits. Because I had no control over my own bladder, I contracted more urinary tract infections, also known as UTI, more than I could count. These infections caused me to have fevers that would go up to 105 degrees, which also affected my kidneys. As a result, I often went to the emergency room to get IVs and took various medicines to keep the fever down. I still vividly remember the horrible taste that the children's Tylenol left in my mouth all the times that I had to take the medicine. And because of this mild trauma, I now avoid foods that have artificial grape and cherry flavors as it reminds me of the times when I had to suffer for days with dangerous fevers and my parents giving me ice baths to cool me down. Another reason for my many hospital visits is due to therapy. As I am paralyzed from the chest down, I have a hard time keeping my balance. To illustrate, imagine a newly built Jenga tower. The newly built Jenga tower represents the able-bodied people for whom, if there is a slight touch, the tower remains sturdy because of its proper structure and support. Now, imagine the tower in the middle of the game where it has missing blocks and even the slightest touch can topple the tower. This mid-game tower represents my balance. In order to improve my balance so I would not fall over as easily, I did many exercises in which the therapist had me sit up and would push me slightly while I struggled to keep myself upright. We practiced this exercise numerous times until I was good enough to hold my balance by myself without support. The therapist and I also worked on my upper body strength as I had to gain enough strength for me to be able to push myself in my wheelchair. We also worked on improving function in my fingers. In order to do this, I practiced repeatedly moving Cheerios and beads from one bowl to another. I also wore finger braces for a while in hopes that they would straighten out my right ring finger. As I got older and my need for these therapies and research trial declined, the research and therapy slowly stopped. Although my hospital visits for research and therapy declined over time, I continued to frequently visit the hospital for surgeries and checkups. Up until recently, I had checkups done every 6 months for my kidneys to monitor their function, my spine to check the level of my scoliosis, and my bladder to see how much it can hold before I get another UTI. The earliest surgery that I remember was done in 2nd grade, where my urology doctor augmented my bladder and slightly rearranged my anatomy so I can go to the bathroom independently. The one after that was my back surgery, done in 5th grade, where my orthopedic surgeon placed rods and screws along my spine. I had another back surgery done in 8th grade when the rods broke from the previous surgery, and the most recent surgery was the removal of my kidney stones early this year. Since I have been in a wheelchair for my whole life, I really had no adjusting to do. My wheelchair was all I remember. When I was about 3 to 5 years old and out in public, older people would comment about how cute I was in my little wheelchair, and I loved the attention I was receiving. At this time, my wheelchair didn't bother me. Then I started school. I knew I was different from other kids. However, I did not know how or why I was different from the rest of my classmates. It wasn't until 4th grade that I starkly realized I was different from the students when I accidentally tapped my chest and my body brace that I had to wear during the day because of my scoliosis produced a loud and hollow sound. My surrounding classmates were shocked and surprised by the sound that came from my chest. Up until this point, I had thought that everybody knew what a body brace was. But evidently, that was not the case. That was the point when I started to become self-conscious about myself. I started to notice some of the stares that people gave me when passing by, and children who were younger than me would ask their parents, "Why is she in that?" Their moms would then get flustered and scramble to answer their child's question without offending me. I did not mind the children asking questions, but I didn't mind the stares, because I realized most were filled with pity. I wanted to disappear into the air to escape from the pitiful looks. I was angry at the world and at God for putting me in a wheelchair. I grew even angrier at God after my first back surgery. My doctor instructed me to not to bend, twist, or even push myself in a manual wheelchair for 6 months. When I first heard the instructions, I thought, how hard could it be? It's only for 6 months. It's bearable. I was very wrong. It was the most excruciating period in my life. I had limited mobility as it was, and suddenly I was restricted even more. The only movement I had were my head, neck, and arms. I felt like I was trapped in another body. Even though I was mostly at home and there's nobody around me, I still felt the stares. It was especially hard when I was trying to fall asleep. I tried every method that I could think of, counting sheep, counting 100 backwards from 100, and I even tried singing Jesus Loves Me to feel His presence. However, I did not feel His presence even when I went to church, or despite how many times I prayed. I felt very lonely even though I was surrounded by family and friends with all of their love and support. I felt even lonelier as I transitioned from children's ministry to youth, as it was the biggest transition of my life during that time period. Thankfully, there are older brothers and sisters who made me feel welcome, made me feel less lonely, and made my healing process feel faster. As I started to adjust to youth ministry for a moment, I found peace with myself and started a relationship with God. During my teenage years, I was at war with myself and once again frustrated with God. Because of this, I put up walls around myself. I hated the idea of displaying any sad emotions to the world because I did not want to seem weak. And I hid my emotions even from my own family. I thought if I showed any sadness, that I would be proving true to the negative assumptions about the disabled community, that disabled people are always sad and angry with the world. To disprove this statement, I faked a smile and put on my happy mask whenever I was out in public, and sometimes in front of my friends and family. I thought I was the only one who felt this way until my friend from college recently interviewed me for her class essay. She asked if the disability myth where disabled people try to make it look like they're content with their life to overcome stereotypes was true. I was relieved that I was not the only one who felt like they had to put on a fake face to prove societal worth. Before I knew that my lack of worth was a myth, I asked God many times to make me walk for at least a day or even an hour. I wanted to know what it felt like to have feeling in my legs and walk at least once in my life. When my parents were not answered, I wanted to turn my back against God completely. My physical disability also prevented me from certain events and activities, which increased my anger even more. I was more angry with myself as I felt like I always had to play a solo nunchi game. I often had to, and sometimes I still do, observe people's words and body language to see if I was able and welcome to join in certain activities. For one example, imagine a group of people jump roping together at the same time, and I'm the last one to join in. In fear of messing things up or being a burden if I did join, I would intentionally exclude myself so people would enjoy themselves without worrying about me. God tested me again in 7th and 8th grade. In 7th grade, there were rumors going around about me that I was able to walk, but decided to stay in a wheelchair for attention. Surprisingly, instead of getting angry, I joked with my best friend about the situation and came up with ideas to prove that I am heavily dependent on my wheelchair. To this day, I do not know who first spread the rumors. However, my best friend told me that a person saw my leg spasm and thought it meant I could walk. I believe the real test was in 8th grade. My mom and I heard metal scraping against each other in my back. We thought it was normal and did not give it much thought. We went to Philadelphia for a checkup. My orthopedic doctor told me the worst news. He said my rods had broken and we needed to do surgery as soon as possible. He also said that rods breaking, especially years after surgery, was rare and only happens to 1% of the people. Unfortunately, I was in the 1%. When I heard the news, I thought the world was coming to an end. Without thinking, I went to the FACT, currently known as Kairos, Facebook page and posted a prayer request after I left the office. After it was posted, I was shocked at myself as I rarely asked for prayer requests. In the post, I briefly described how recovery felt like hell and asked for a speedy recovery. I don't know if it was because I had experienced it before, but the recovery period felt shorter the second time. I received numerous prayers and support, and thankfully the recovery seemed short and not as lonely as before. I've yet to completely understand God's plan for me. However, a few years ago, I have made peace with myself and accepted the fact that I will be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. And people will always stare at me no matter where I go. Since I made peace, it feels like a blockage has been lifted and my perspective has been slightly changed. I have learned that I may be physically different from everybody else, but I can still do activities that other people could do with some alterations that accommodates for me. As I struggled with establishing a relationship with God for most of my life, I'm currently trying to reconnect with God and try to understand as why He chose me as the one who is in a wheelchair. I am the person I am today because God has given me my mom, who took me to my hospital visits despite the distance which caused my dad to work, so my family could have shelter, food, and clean clothes. Because my friends were at my side, providing me with laughter when I needed it the most. My church community that has constantly been praying for me since I started this church at a young age. And lastly, Reverend Kim and Samonim, who had also traveled great distances to all of the hospitals I had surgeries to pray for me right before I went in. I am very thankful that God surrounded me with people who have supported and gave me wonderful strength to overcome these obstacles. Thank you.